members are hungry for unity.
Mhm.
They are hungry for it and all. And it's you can just tell it's I can't remember just how many members have come up to me from congregation where I serve at and other congregations like this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I think there is a shift. And I had even one older preacher mention that this may be the shift God is trying to send the church in after COVID.
Mhm.
That hey, it's time for the churches to come together and do way more collaboration and definitely be diverse.
Well, Patterson and Chris, thank you guys so much for joining us on Faith in the Folds. How are y'all doing this morning?
Good, good.
Doing good as well.
Good, good. Well, guys, I'm really excited to have this conversation because it sounds like y'all and some other preachers there in the Nashville area, which is ever expanding, by the way. It feels kind of like the universe, right? It's just constantly expanding. That y'all and a couple other preachers there in the Nashville area have done something pretty cool. But before we get to that, I'd love to hear some introductions from y'all. I know Patterson a little bit. I've met Chris for the first time this morning. And so, Chris, can we start out with you? Where are you preaching? How did you get there? How long have you been in congregational ministry? Help us get to know you, sir.
All right, my name is Christopher Jackson. I'm from Southern Georgia, Valdosta, the Morven area. Been preaching probably about for 21 years. Past 4 years, I've been at Jackson Church of Christ in Nashville, Tennessee. This was the first ever congregation that Marshall Keeble started.
Okay.
And so historic, legendary congregation. Been here about for 4 years. Got up here. A older preacher had told me about the job opening, and I was like, "Hey, they probably won't hire me, but I'll try out anyway." and how about it? God has a sense of humor. He sent me to a church that I have the same last name, Jackson. I'm at Jackson Street, and my last name is Jackson, and I thought they wasn't going to hire me just because my last name. That hey, we don't want anybody thinking we named the church after him. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my story, and so just grateful. Just grateful. I didn't go to went to Valdosta State University and then Truro University for my master's and all. So yes.
Great. All right. I knew when you said Jackson Street earlier, I was like, man, why do I know that name? I know that name for some reason. And yeah, it turns out the connection with Marshall Keeble. We have a gentleman, a retired elder at our church down here in Corpus Christi named Bob Hughes, who was one of Marshall Keeble's students.
Wow.
He traveled around with Keeble and it's got some stories to tell. That's for sure.
Oh man,
I'd love to get you guys connected at some point because
definitely.
He's a real resource. So, well, Chris, glad your church was able to hire you despite that unfortunate last name. Who knew, right? Patterson, what about you, man? I've had the pleasure to know you for about a year and a bit. Tell us, how did you make it up to the States, and how are you where you are right now?
Oh my goodness, that's been a journey in and of itself. Growing up, I always eventually saw myself getting into ministry, but not until, maybe well into my, I want to say 50s, because my goal from as long as I could remember, I've always been determined to become an elder one day. So, my path to ministry, I felt like would have come later in life. I became a Christian at the age of 14. Not that I didn't desire to become a Christian earlier, but just several things happened in life, among my family, that just didn't allow it to materialize as early as I desired. So at the age of 14, I did take the step of being baptized and got involved almost immediately in upfront services, door-to-door evangelistic type stuff. I had the opportunity to lead the communion table, but my thing, honestly, was singing. So I took over the bulk of worship leading at the little congregation where I was at, and just really fell in love with people, as a whole. I just love serving, I love communicating, I love helping folks, and I found myself, I felt like I did have the gift of encouragement. So, given the opportunity at one point to either come to the US and pursue a soccer scholarship, or at the time go to the Trinidad School of Preaching and Teaching. I went the route that pretty much ticked my mother off, which was to go to the Trinidad School of Preaching. It's funny because we laugh about it now, but in the moment, she couldn't understand it. My grandmother, the person who was a huge influence on my spiritual journey, she was elated, but she often said, there's a huge responsibility on anybody that desires to preach. So I went into preaching school at a young age. I think I was 20 at the time when I went into preaching school, just out of college per se, or about to enter into college life. And everything from the moment I got into preaching school, honestly, Kevin, I just felt like if I was doing something that I was meant to be doing.
Yes.
I didn't feel at the time that I had the capacity to do it well, but I did feel a sense of, I do feel like this is where I'm supposed to be, even if it wasn't preaching, just helping people, helping people come to Christ, etc. And so that just developed throughout the years of maybe moving from a student to, eventually into the pulpit, and that matriculated while I was in Trinidad into me doing ministry for about 14 years until 2017. I had the opportunity to step into a scholarship that Harding University had offered, and I've been in the U.S. ever since. I'm finishing up my undergrad this semester. It took me a little bit longer than anticipated, but God is still good.
Yes.
My family and I, we had some health struggles with my wife when she was pregnant with our second kid, and I just had to slow down for a bit, but I don't regret anything for 1 minute. And so that's how I ended up being in the U.S. To this present point.
Yeah. And that program that you're doing at Harding, is it still like a pretty accelerated 2-year program?
It is.
Yeah.
You could do it in 2 years if you have the capacity, and most people do, honestly.
Yeah.
But Harding has done a great job, I think, in opening up the scholarship for potential scholarship recipients to choose whichever biblical path they want to and major they want to. Okay. So now we've been blessed to receive the scholarship, and we could determine which path we want to take, whether it's the B-Min path that you go straight from your undergrad into your master's, the B-Div, or several of the different Bible degrees that they have: Bible and missions, Bible and preaching, Bible and ministry, Bible and family and family, youth and family ministry. So it's an awesome time right now for anybody that's 24 years and older, desiring to get into ministry, or maybe if you're in ministry already and you feel like you want to come and be further equipped. It's a really exciting time for somebody like that to have the possibility of being a recipient of this particular scholarship.
Yeah, it's a neat program. I've run into a lot of folks over the years who have gone through that program. It's had a bunch of different names over the years,
yes,
but it has been it's been fun getting to catch up with those guys every year. at lectureship.
I'm trying to get Chris to take it.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
he
sir.
definitely is. He definitely is, and I've been giving it some serious thought lately. I really have.
Well, good. I can. I mean, I can recommend just as an outsider looking in, the quality of education and everything else. That it's a really solid program. Chris, by the way, that reminds me. I wanted to ask you. You mentioned kind of how long you had been, preaching and working in congregational ministry. What led you into that? Was there a particular person, or like what Patterson said, just a real sense that like, man, this is really what I need to be doing?
Yeah, it was a particular person when I was in college. The minister at that time was Alvin L. Daniels, and he had asked me one night to extend the invitation, and I'm like, hey, I can extend the invitation. I've heard a million invitations, and so I extended the invitation. Then about a month later, he asked me to speak on a Sunday evening, and so I remember putting together that sermon and speaking. And after speaking, it felt natural to me, but the confirmation, I think, was that many of the members were coming up saying that God has called you to preach. And so from there, he took me under his wings, because I was for a long time I felt sort of like Jonah. Preaching was the last thing I wanted to do, just from the stress and the pay and just all of that stuff that comes along with it and all. And so I sort of had like my Jonah years that, yeah, I would fill in and speak, but I really don't want to preach. But he took me up under his wings. He did. Charlie McClendon, the late great Arnelius Crenshaw, older men like that took me up under their wings and just showed me different facets of ministry and encouragement. And they're the reason I'm here today. To be honest with you, I'm just falling in love with preaching probably in the last few years.
Yeah. Man, I totally get that and resonate too with that kind of sense of that. So like how you called it Jonah years. Patterson, I don't know if you know this about me. I minored in Greek as an undergraduate student at Harding. I got my bachelor's in history, but I minored in Greek just because I thought it would be fun, right? I didn't know that was not normal. I didn't know that normal people don't do that. And I thought, well, like I'm in a history major, and Greek is a historical language, so it kind of makes sense. But I ended up taking I got a master's degree in education, master's of science in education, while I was also still in Circean. So like I was there for 6 years, and during that time, I took 7 semesters of Greek, and I honestly thought for a moment about double majoring in biblical languages. But what I didn't like was all the preaching and ministry classes.
Oh yeah.
I just wanted to take the Greek and the Hebrew, and eventually landed at the Harding School of Theology in 2010, and was having to take preaching and ministry classes and things like that. So Chris, I can relate, man. I get it. Well, guys, I first heard about something pretty cool that y'all's churches did, and from my friend Mark Adams, who is there at Tusculum Church of Christ in the Nashville area. And as I've mentioned before on this episode and other episodes, Mark and I are lifelong friends. Mark was actually the preacher here at King's Crossing when Tusculum finally roped him away and grabbed him beginning of this year. But I appreciate y'all not gloating or anything like that. But I saw Mark mention this on Facebook, and then later saw the write-up in Christian Chronicle. I was like, man, this is a cool thing. I want to hear more about this, especially from you guys. Tell me about this multi-church, like Wednesday series that y'all did. How did that get started? What was it like? What were some of the challenges you faced? I'd love to hear anything and everything you want to share about this, because it sounds really cool.
All right, I'll let Chris go first.
Okay. We all five of us, Patterson, Mark, Aaron, Joshua Jackson, myself. I didn't leave out anybody, did I? I think sometimes I forget how to count.
I felt like that was 5 names.
Okay, yeah. And so it started out with us just having lunch together because all of us are sort of new to the Nashville area. I think Aaron, who is at Smyrna Church of Christ, I think he's been here longer than any one of us. And so it just started out with us having lunch together, chit-chatting, just like a day of preachers chilling, as if there was a reality show of preachers chilling. We would go to different.
Yeah, that sounds like the beginnings of a good podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we would go to lunch. We were doing it once a month and just talking, just having a good time, since all 5 of us were new, since all 5 of us were sort of new in the area. And just from there, just over lunch, it was like, hey, how would this be if our churches were able to come together and sort of have, I guess, some type of service or just something and everything. It would be cool. And what started out as a fantasy in my mind, the Lord blessed it. Great people like Aaron and Patterson, and man, it was just extremely amazing. It really was, man. It really was how God blessed it, how it came together sort of easily. I've had older preachers who say that it's with the right group of preachers, because none of us have egos, so it wasn't like, who's gonna be doing it. It was just amazing. It really was amazing. And so I was telling somebody last night to walk for water. I let them plan, and I just tell them, y'all just let me know where I need to be and what I need to announce, and I'll be there, and I'm gonna just ride on their coattails, because they some amazing organizers and planners and all.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So I don't know. Go ahead, Patterson. Go ahead.
No, I was saying I don't know if I have anything much to add to that. Other than saying, like Chris said, when we kind of brought the idea of what would it look like, we started thinking, well, okay, maybe getting some of the youth groups, having like a combined youth group camp, and just starting to throw things out. And then I'm trying to remember who maybe have suggested, what about just doing like a worship, just like an evening. We'll find an evening that could work, and kind of just invite everybody out and just kind of see how things go from there. And then it's almost like we went silent for like 20 seconds, like
yeah,
like, yeah. No, like for real, like we could pull together like a worship and have a speaker, have some good singing, just a really good time of fellowship and worship and praise. And then, maybe have some activities after. So where, people won't rush home, just really get that intermingling going on, and have members, get to know each other a little bit more. And that was where, kind of like the light bulb went off. Okay, great. That's going to be it. How is it going to work out from this point on? And so I think we kind of settled on, at the time, with COVID going on, the Jackson Street Church was still very much concerned about, hosting an event like that. But they were gracious enough, honestly, to really lend us a lot of their resources, the biggest being Chris. And so the other 4 congregations, we hosted at our locations a specific day, and it was like four Sundays in a row that we did this. And so it started in Tusculum. The second time around was at Antioch. The third time we went to Smyrna, and then we ended. It got so big by the time we ended that we couldn't host it at Rural Hills Auditorium. Mm-hmm. Ezel Harding Christian School, they were like, no, well, we already know, because Dr. Lindsay Judd, he was there from the beginning. Yeah. So, I mean, as soon as we were done in Tusculum, he made a beeline to me. He was like, if this continues to grow, I don't think Rural Hill will be able to handle this. We will be willing to donate any and every facility that we have, which would have included the gym, parking facilities, you name it, kitchen, whatever. and they, I mean, he stepped in almost immediately. So the last event we hosted was actually hosted by Rural Hill inside the auditorium of Ezel Harding Christian School, which is right adjacent.
I was going to say, for those not familiar, that's literally next door.
Yeah, next door.
Yes.
But but it's the fact that he, as the principal, I don't know how many hoops he, people have to jump through, red tape and stuff. But like I said, he almost immediately, first Sunday, as soon as it was done, he was like, no, they won't be able to host this. We'll volunteer our services, and the rest is kind of like history now. It's been such a blessing, and I know Chris could say more about it, but I'll stop there for now.
Was there a theme to the like to the lessons, or like, was there like a common thread that kind of ran through everybody's talk when y'all would speak?
Yes, the common theme was I think greater together. I know it was taken from Romans chapter 15, but the idea was of greater together. So it was just each lesson was on some type of aspect of unity, and how the church is able to accomplish just more when we come together. So that was like the theme. And just to be honest with you, I know I can personally say I was shocked of the crowd. It reminds me, it reminds me on how God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. Because I remember pulling up to the first one, and I was getting nervous. I was like, oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, because even the traffic was like backed up at Tusculum coming in.
Yeah.
And you're not used to seeing a crowd that big, especially since COVID and everything. Right. And so this was like a pre-COVID crowd. And
are these on Sunday nights or Sunday mornings?
Nights.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. So extraordinary crowds on your, on at a time when you expect lesser people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, that's cool. Wow, that's cool. Yeah. So sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. And Patterson, if Patterson can chime in, I think because we were saying it probably about 300 people or something. I think when we were throwing out maybe.
Well, it was interesting because, to be honest, the first event and the third event. So at Tusculum that hosted that first event, nearly all the congregations had different groups, youth groups, whatever, that worked out. So we're like, okay, this is just going to be a nice icebreaker. We're going to have a good time regardless. But we showed up. I think Tusculum had catered in their minds for like 500 people. So they kind of catered for that in terms of food. And right now in Nashville, 500 people, that's a good crowd.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good singing. You throw a good preacher in there, like Chris, who was our preacher for all of the locations.
Oh, okay.
So he kind of developed the thoughts, and people that were there from the beginning to the end. I mean, it was great. But Tusculum soon realized, it's more than 500 people here. I think the count at Tusculum was just shy of 700.
Wow.
Just shy of 700. It was like 635 around there, and so with Antioch being, the second leg, we kind of learned just from the experience in terms of, okay, this is the type of crowd that's going to be the base going forward. We're going to have to cater a certain amount of food, thinking through the food line, just all the logistics and stuff. And by the time it swung around to Antioch, I mean, I think we had a little over 700 in number. And then the interesting thing is we got to July 4th, which was Independence Weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, big holiday. So we were thinking, several people going to be out. Well, listen, Smyrna was packed.
Yeah.
Smyrna was packed. Smyrna was just shy of 800 people. So, we were like, we probably need to cater 5,000 people. And
everybody was pumped about freedom in Christ.
Oh my goodness. It was huge. Yeah. It was huge. Oh, I remember what the what also was the special nature of the event that Tusculum hosted, it was actually June 19th, so Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
And Mark did, I mean, an excellent excerpt on June 19th, the history of it, and he tied it in to this freedom that we have in Christ, man. And that just I mean, that just took, you know, everything to a different level. So it was good. It was great.
I've seen Mark be able to take what are potentially, and I'll emphasize that word, potentially, controversial issues or topics or things, and can handle them in such a way to where it's really non-threatening, but also convicting, and it's just reasonable and sensible. And wow, what a treat for that to happen at that time. That's really cool. I had forgotten what I knew. It happened a couple of months ago, but I mean, I've been in the school system so long that summers don't count. I think only semesters, right? Our kids are in school, so I think about semesters. So if something happens in the summer, it's like, I don't know when that happened.
Yeah.
So, well, man, that's neat. And Chris, I didn't know you spoke all 4 instances. Is that right?
Yes. Cool. I did. It was Patterson and Aaron's idea. You know, I was skeptical at first, but like I said, I think it ended up being a great idea, even if it wouldn't have been me as the speaker, because I think it built some type of consistency, some type of getting to know the crowd, and everything. But yeah, it was Aaron and Patterson's idea, and like I said, I'd have been content just doing security, man, or just chilling, or just chilling and all.
Yeah. Well, so the theme was taken from Romans, and greater together, right?
Yes. And as you talk, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm gonna actually find the scripture in Romans. I know it's in Romans 15.
No, that's fine. I'll normally I'll tell everybody, okay, we're gonna be into Acts such and such, and then I'll just kind of riff for the next couple of minutes, and I'll even say, it's like, okay, now that I've given you time to find that Bible verse, all right, let's get into it. I like that. How this came about is that it was 5 ministers, 5 preachers, 5 ministers who happened to be preachers, who were realizing, hey, it would be good for us if we could have some time to spend together with other guys who are in the same boat and maybe facing similar challenges. Even though Mark is still pretty new at Tusculum, but he's from Nashville. He ministered up at Old Hickory for I think 10 or so years, 7 to 10 years, something like that, as an associate, which is code for youth minister. And he did, he did that. So like, he kind of knows the area, but Tusculum is new to him. And to have you other guys, Patterson, I think you've been at Antioch for less than 2 years. Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, this past June was my first year.
Oh, okay.
My anniversary year. So I'm new to this area.
Yeah.
My wife always jokes, and this is no joke. When we started going to Memphis, because my biggest connection to Tennessee has been Memphis through the Midtown Church of Christ, where Harold Red is the senior minister there. I spent almost 2.5 years, a close relationship / mentorship and stuff at Midtown. And I remember, when you come off and you cross the bridge, and so the Bass Pyramid is going to be on your left. Before you make that turn off to get and make your way back, to the Midtown Church of Christ, there is the big sign that you see on the left that has Nashville on it. And I'll never forget the first time we made that trip, and my wife saw the Nashville sign. She was like, we need to visit Nashville. And I'm like, what is there in Nashville that we need to visit? But every time
they have another Bass Pro. That's what you need to go see.
No. I was like, Sherry, my wife's name is Sherry, and I'm like, Sherry, there is no need. Like, we probably will be here and never, ever, ever go to Nashville. And so
as a native Nashvilleian, I get it, and I'm not offended, but it's just funny because
my goodness,
Memphis and Nashville, they pick on each other's nerves. There's good and bad about both. But anyway.
Yes, sir.
Well, man. Okay, so Chris, do you have the scripture for us?
Yes, it was
Correct.
Romans 15:5, verses 5 and 6.
Yeah.
It was, now may the God who gives perseverance and encouragement grant you to be the same mind with one another according to Jesus Christ, so that with one purpose and one voice you may glorify the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir.
One purpose and one voice. Patterson was there at Harding University's lectureship here at the time of recording, just about 3 or so weeks ago, and they were coming out of the 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and consistently there is a call for unity within that congregation. Not even churches, not even churches as separate as Antioch or Jackson Street or Tusculum, but as like the 2 or 3 house churches that made up the church in Corinth. The calls are similar there. Man, it
was powerful. It was powerful.
It's telling that is still very much a relevant message for us today. And that brings me to the whole, kind of bring it back around, bring it back full circle here. That's why I am so impressed by just y'all's sense of, hey, we're kind of here. Most of us are fairly new, or have been here just a few years in our positions here in Nashville. Let's get together and let's lean on each other, because ministry can be pretty isolating, right?
Yeah.
Can y'all talk to me about that? How is it that ministry can be isolating, and was that an impetus for wanting to lean on each other in the way that you did here?
As you know, just the isolation of when you're having to deal with certain different issues at your congregation, and especially being new, because it's also the reluctance of, okay, I don't know who to trust in the congregation, so who can I pour my heart out to when you just want to vent as a preacher, and then sometimes the enemy begins to play tricks with your mind that, hey, you in this all alone, you might not be in the right city, just all of that stuff. There's nobody out there for you to lean on. And so just to be able to, for us, I think it started out organically, just as, hey, let's just get together to meet, to know more about each other, since we were all new. And what birthed out of that was, okay, we can also lean on each other, because when we would come together to eat, it was always a lot of laughing and joking, or talking about different preachers who have blessed us, and good books to read and all. And so it was just like a natural camaraderie that it was just birthed out of friendship and out of food and all. And so that was the blessing. But I can truly say, and I think Patterson would agree, after we began to meet and have lunch, you felt like you had an actual fraternity, in the area where you stayed at, an actual preaching family, that, hey, if this is getting hectic, and I can call on Patterson, which I have, and so that was I think one of the biggest takeaways of, after the food and the friend and having a good time. All of us could be like, okay, we know that if we ever need a pick me up or some encouragement, we got 4 or 5 brothers we could call on, that would definitely be there for us.
Yeah.
I think And I second everything Chris said. I think for me, coming in, my experience has always been, of course, a bit different. I'm coming from the Caribbean, uh, where everybody knows everybody because there's always opportunities for all of the congregations, even if it's once a year where we have like an island-wide fellowship, or you would do 2 or 3 in 1
Right.
workshops and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I've always been a part of congregations, and even when I got into the pulpit and was blessed with the opportunity to lead, always encourage, the congregations that I was able to minister to, not to self-isolate.
Yeah.
Get together, get to know, partner with, cooperate, live life as a broader church and not
Yeah.
simply in the isolation of congregationalism. And I think not just in our fellowship, but in any faith group, sometimes we tend to think in Christendom, okay, while I'm not knocking autonomy, that's not what I'm doing. I believe there is a place for it, of course, but I feel like we sometimes draw those geographical lines
Right.
of borders when it comes to the greater work that we're all supposed
Yes.
to participate in, which is saving souls.
Yes.
And it limits us in so many ways because
Yes.
we always hear the statement, money makes the world go round. We know that's not true in the fullest sense of the term, but there's some truth to it in terms of, you have to pay your bills, you have to do all this kind of stuff, and it involves money. But it's the same thing when we're doing service.
Right.
Depending on how grand a scale we're operating when it comes to ministry, it's going to take
Yes.
finance. And then, if you're doing evangelism right, if you're doing discipleship right, then
Right.
you will encounter people that are less fortunate, that need assistance here and there.
Yeah.
And so, I just came at this, even when I came to Nashville,
Yes.
I came with this mentality that's been in my DNA. You
Yes.
cannot do it. You should not. It was never in
Right.
God's design for us to be in isolation as we pursue, Christian living. Uh,
Amen.
Mhm.
and then to add a next component, to be honest,
Yes.
this had more to do with my context here at Antioch. I felt the need for this greater together, and why I'm so invested in it is because I serve at a church that is becoming more and more multicultural, more and more multi-ethnic.
Yeah.
And so what better way to help my church expand our thinking, of all the different groups that we have. We have a beautiful mix of Hispanic members. Where we have a growing population once again of African American
Yes.
brethren, and of course, the majority of our membership here is Caucasian in nature. And so, what better way to help people experience the wonder of what it looks like to be in a multicultural setting, as a multicultural worship. So experiencing the African American style of Chris, preaching, experiencing different styles of prayer, experiencing different worship leaders, and just the atmosphere, experiencing people being boisterous and emotional while the preacher is preaching, or the songs or the prayers and stuff like that. So, for me, it's like where the experience factor is going to be great in terms of learning and stretching and expanding people's perception of life and worship and everything else. So I just felt like this couldn't come at a better time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Go ahead,
if I could second or third, whichever one it is, everything Patterson said, um, like I said, God had his hand on it, and Patterson hit it on the head of churches not being in isolation, even though we are autonomous. And And we have to give a shout out just to the elders
Yes, sir.
of
Yes,
the
sir.
congregations, because they were just as supportive as the ministers. And I remember even one of the times after service when we was having a time of just elders and ministers together praying, how one of the elders were they were mentioning how this cannot stop. In other words, we've started something great of the churches coming together on one purpose. And so basically, I'm gonna paraphrase his words, that we have to make sure we don't get in the way of what God is doing, and stay united. So the elders, they have been extremely important, and just to show you just the fruits of what Patterson was saying, of how of us coming together. We had the Walk for Water yesterday, with the Greater Together Churches of Christ, and now even more Churches of Christ came on board to help. And so I think we had at least 20 congregations
represented.
So
yes, sir.
we broke a record. We broke the record for healing hands when it comes for walking for water. 900 and I think 33 people showed up to walk in the rain. That's in the rain. And
it's a little chilly up there too, right?
Yeah, a little chilly, but definitely the rain. And as of last night, we had raised over around $50,000. So we're on track to build 7 wells in Africa. And so all of that would not have been possible if one congregation did it, but by all the congregations coming together and participating, we're actually able to do something. In other words, us coming together, being greater together, we're always going to be able to get more done than 1 or 2 congregations trying to do it by themselves. And I think even last night was a witness to that as well.
Yeah.
Man.
Yes, sir.
Guys, it's not good for a podcast host to be speechless, but I'm basically speechless just at how just beautiful and neat and moving and touching all of this is. I'll mention this. In South Texas, ministry can be pretty isolating because you know, and y'all have experienced this too, I'm sure. Sometimes churches might have the same name on the door, same last name on the door, right? Church of Christ, and they don't always get along. No. And when that's the case, it's a real detriment, and it's a real blight on our witness. And and especially in a context like a cultural context like mine, where there are just fewer churches of Christ anyway, because we're kind of outside of the Bible Belt, right? Nashville. I mean, you mentioned that you had 20 churches of Christ, or representatives of 20 different churches of Christ there for Walk for Water. You could throw a stick and hit 20 churches of Christ in Nashville, but down here it's a little different. And so I'm just so thrilled that that this seems to be a really beautiful beginning of something neat. Let me ask, dream with me for a minute as we kind of get near to the end of our time this morning. Dream with me for a minute. Let's say that things like this continue happening, and y'all keep getting to do this kind of thing with your churches. What are some things you'd love to see happen?
Patterson, I'll let you.
Oh, okay. No, that's cool, bro. I mean, I think just spending time with the group of guys, and recently I need to put this in too, because this kind of falls as a good transition into what we were talking about and what I'm about to share. I think the whole Greater Together concept and everything that we did kind of just proved that people are in fact hungry for unity, for collaboration, for working. And one of the newest persons to come on board in terms of just having lunch with us and stuff is a brother by the name of Derek Shepherd.
Yes.
At the time when we met Derek was ministering over in a church in Goodlettsville Church of Christ, I believe. And he was just getting ready to transition from Goodlettsville over into Una, which Una is, pretty close to all of us. It's like 5 or 6 minutes from me, 5 minutes from Rural Hill, if not less. But as soon as Derek was moving, even when he was negotiating, right, he told the eldership, listen, I would definitely want this church to be a major part of the Greater Together group. And because you had a couple elders that were already participating in the different events, they were like, hey, absolutely. And so, they are, say officially, but they came on board in a major way, and they are offering to assist wherever and whenever necessary. So all that to say this, the hope is, and we have every single one of these brothers are big dreamers, and I feel like, whenever we're talking dreaming big, there's a negative connotation of course that often is associated with it, because you get the sense of, well, oh, you're just thinking about grandeur, and you're just thinking about developing a name for yourself. I could safely say, and Chris could say otherwise, I could safely say when I talk about dreaming big, every single one of these brothers that I've come to hold dear as friends and co-laborers, the big vision is always about ministry. Mm-hmm. How could we go from reaching 100 people to 1,000 people to 100,000 people to 1,000,000 people? So the dream, as far as Greater Together, is big, but it's big because of ministry. And so, to answer your question, it's going to be vague at best, because the vision for Greater Together and what Greater Together can accomplish in the future, or hopes to accomplish in the future, is always going to be, how could we impact as many people as we possibly can? Mm-hmm. What that looks like in terms of specificity, I can't say. The Walk for Water event was just one thing. We're thinking about in the future, possibly hosting a conference of some sort, doing some other types of service-oriented events, again, the sky's the limit, especially when we come together and we pool our resources. I'll say one more thing, and I'll let Chris talk. I think for me, and again, just talking with all the other brothers and knowing my context, part of the vision for me is really incorporating a fuller sense of a bilingual approach to ministry. I serve at a congregation that has a large Hispanic group, and the drive has been, I didn't push that. I came here where that was already in the works and developing. We have a Hispanic minister. We don't even call him the Hispanic minister, really, but we have a minister here in the person of Jose Nieto, who is and has done a great job in developing a culture that doesn't see our worship split between Hispanics who worship at a specific time and the English speaking. No, we have a culture, at least we're trying to develop a better culture where we're all in the same space. We use interpretation, technology and stuff like that, bilingual singing, full Spanish songs, the whole 9 yards. And for me, when I think about it, I think one of the components I would love to see that the Greater Together is able to cultivate along, in the Nashville area, is to help create an atmosphere that says we don't have to do these ministries separate. Mm-hmm. But it might take some more work, but it could be that we could create something that is inclusive and doesn't just include, right? And so that's one of the areas that I think of and dream of, And I know we've spoken about that, but I'll let Chris kind of share some of his thoughts as well.
No, I just agree with everything that Patterson says, and I would, and like I said, and this just is something I dream about, but I think with the greater together and Nashville being, we know heaven is our headquarters, but Nashville being one of the U.S. headquarters of the Churches of Christ. Oh man,
it's like a fort in the enemy-occupied territory of Earth.
Right. And so I really think there's enough Churches of Christ in Middle Tennessee that I really think that we could each year pack out Nissan Stadium. I really think so.
Yeah.
And so, like Patterson said, if we could grow it, we're able to get thousands and thousands of people in there at one time. I think that God is definitely more than able, and just with the different resources that are here in the Church of Christ. That's one of the things I tell the leadership here is that, hey, if we ever need any type of resource, we don't have to go outside of one of the Churches of Christ here, because there's just that many resources here.
Yeah.
In Middle Tennessee, just in Middle Tennessee. And so that's one of the dreams I have, that we're able to grow this, that we have to have it somewhere like at Nissan Stadium.
Yeah. Chris, who plays at Nissan Stadium? I forgot.
I think it's the Dallas Cowboys. It's like Tennessee Titans. We'll put a real winner in the Titans Stadium. Oh, man. Let me stop. You might have to edit it out.
Yeah. Well, maybe not after last night's game. Guys, and that specifically, Patterson, you mentioning the multiculturalism of the Antioch congregation, and particularly, or more broadly, the Antioch neighborhood. Since I'm from Nashville, you all, like, whenever you live in a town, especially when you grew up there, you always like, you kind of know, it's like, okay, well, like there's usually higher concentrations of this particular ethnicity in these parts of town, and Antioch has been that way for a while, that I can remember, at least.
Yeah.
And to have y'all experiencing, or for y'all to be aware that it is good to be able to offer ministry in for English speakers and Spanish speakers. Those are good things, but ultimately you use that word that I'm big on, when understood in the best way, inclusion. There's this beautiful scene in the book of Revelation where all peoples, a countless multitude from every nation, tribe, tongue, and people are singing it and worshiping, and to be able to try to realize that in miniature there in places like Antioch, or even places like Corpus Christi, where the city itself, I believe, is, if not 50%, Hispanic. It might be a little bit more, and it's very, very common for for friends here who grew up in the Valley of South Texas to speak Spanish and English equally, with equal proficiency. And there's a great need for that kind of thing here, just like in places like Antioch and elsewhere. Man, I hope that works out well for y'all, and that this, I think it's fair to say, this Greater Together movement is kind of heading in that direction. I really hope that takes off, and encourages people to get to know and get to work alongside others who are in some way, whether language or skin color or whatever it is, in some way different from them, and we're all pulling each other along and growing growing in greater Christ-likeness. Man, that's
Yes, sir.
that's
Yes,
cool,
sir.
guys. That's really cool.
Yes, sir.
Well, hey, as we wrap up here, is there one final like home run point or takeaway or anything else like that that either of you want to share, either or both of you want to share as we wind down today?
Yeah, I'll go first and I'll let Patterson close it out. It's something Patterson said, which I totally agree with, and I think I personally I've seen it. I think that it is the season that members are hungry for unity.
Mm-hmm.
They are hungry for it, and it's you can just tell it's, I can't remember just how many members have come up to me from congregation where I serve at and other congregations like, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I think there is a shift. And I had even one older preacher mention that, this may be the shift God is trying to send the church in after COVID,
Mm-hmm.
that, hey, it's time for the churches to come together and do way more collaboration and definitely be diverse. And so that would be my home run point, is that I think our congregations are hungry for unity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Praise God.
I'll end by saying this, because I almost feel the need to, especially since your podcast makes it all over the US and the Caribbean and the world, honestly. Greater Together is not an entity separate and apart from the Churches of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's sad that I have to make that disclaimer, but I know our fellowship.
Sure.
It is not.
Your people, right? And how we are. How we are.
My goodness. My goodness. It is not an entity separate and apart from the church. Rather, what it is, it's an intentional perspective and view toward collaboration and unity. For too long, the simplest of things have separated us and caused us not to come together. And I know some of those things are theological. I know some of those things are opinionated. And quite frankly, even some of the things we claim to be theological, we recognize if we're honest with ourselves, it's opinionated. But it's neither here nor there. The point I'm making is, this is in fact an effort for us to just come together,
yes,
worship, get to know each other, and help in terms of serving the communities of which we are a part, serving this world as we strive to bring people closer to Christ. If you have a theological difference, we have avenues that we could deal with that. It doesn't mean to say we can't wave each other hello when we're passing in the aisles at Walmart, right? And so I think this is a perfect effort for us to teach our current membership and future memberships that we need to be adults, we need to be mature, and having a difference of view doesn't mean that you need to treat somebody as if they're already destined for a place that none of us wants to go. And so, really that's the drive, that's the thrust, that's the hope. This is not an elite group that you have to pay membership to. Anybody and everybody, let me repeat that. Anybody and everybody is welcome to come in and participate. All right. So I feel the need to make that absolutely clear.
Yeah.
That's
guys,
good, bro.
This has been just an absolute treat to be able to hear about all of this. My heart is warmed greatly as a Nashvilleian, and I don't know if you can see my Tennessee flag over here. I live in Texas. I just want these guys to know, okay? Right? My kids, my 6-year-old last year in kindergarten, he's in first grade now, but last year in kindergarten, we were just walking around Walmart one day and he saw a Texas Longhorn and he's like, "Dad, that's a Longhorn." And I'm like, how do you know? How do you know what that is? And he's like, "Oh, we're learning about it." And like, what do you say? Like Texas symbols or something like that. And so whenever they see a Texas flag, say, Dad, that's our state flag. He's like, yeah, buddy, but we like our state flags with 3 stars.
Yes.
But to hear this kind of thing happening in my hometown is just absolutely heartwarming. I was in Memphis at Harding School of Theology. Actually, I was out of the state at that time when the floods happened 12 years ago. The major flooding that, I mean, goodness, it took the Cumberland River up to, at least past, 2nd or 3rd Avenue there downtown. Just ugly devastation, 500-year flood. And it hurt. It physically hurt that I couldn't be there to help, my girlfriend at the time, now wife's family, drain out their, their basement, to check on my folks who still live, between Opryland Hotel and the airport over there in Donaldson. It physically hurt, but churches jumped in and they helped out. And here we are coming out of an even greater catastrophe of COVID. And it seems like the rust is being scraped off, the dust is being shaken off, and people and churches are waking up and they're saying, we're ready to get up and to do something. It's time. It's absolutely time. And it just is just so heartwarming to know that not just with the 5 of y'all, but with so many others there in Nashville, in the Middle Tennessee area, are willing to say, God, here I am, send me.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Guys, this has been a treat. I really appreciate y'all's time. Blessings on the rest of what y'all are doing. May our failures be redeemable.
Yes, sir.
I'll repeat that again. May our failures be redeemable. And I'm just delighted. And y'all are always welcome to come and, free advertising for anything else that's happening there in Nashville with this group. Okay, guys?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burke, for the opportunity.
Appreciate y'all very much. Y'all take care.
All right, Pat.
All right, bro.